Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for attending the third expert panel webinar that we've done in the Middle East. This one on zero harm is probably the one that actually started the whole thing off for me. Listening to people at different conferences talking about whether you should or shouldn't have zero harm in their mission statement. But quite often these people had, if you will, no skin in the game. They could get on the plane and fly back to the university. The panelists that we have here are people who actually have to live with their decisions. And that's sort of the whole focus or the whole concept of these expert panel webinars is to provide, if you will, just a perspective of reality versus theory. I met Dr. Wada first at a conference in Prague last year, then again at a gas and oil consortium conclave in India. We were both on an expert panel there. And then again in Kuwait. And then he joined me on a number of expert panels in Europe, North America, and India. And he was kind enough to help put together the expert panel here for the Middle East. And I just like to say before he introduces everybody, they have tremendous credentials and pedigree, every one of them. But I've just really been impressed with the answers and how interesting everybody has been. So Wada, if you could, perhaps you could introduce the panelists. Dr. Wada, sorry, Wada, I gotta get a drink, is, and I'll never get this quite right, Wada, but it's in terms of, you know, the director of corporate governance and reliability at Enoch. Please correct me if I get that wrong, but it's, you were in health and safety for a long time. But Dr. Wada also does a lot of consulting with major corporations in Europe with their board of directors, you know, governance, helping them, if you will, make the right decisions for their companies. So very pleased to have him here. And also we've been doing we've been like the webinar kings lately, Dr. Wada and I, all over the place. So thanks again, Wada. And if you could, perhaps you could introduce the panelists for us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from here from the Middle East. I'm based in Dubai. Welcome you all to this third in the series. And as Larry said, we've been doing a few of these. So I won't take too long in our introduction. I assume that many of the people who are online today have been with us before. But let me introduce, starting with Mr. Abdullah Al-Marzouqi. Abdullah Al-Marzouqi is the immediate director for HSE for the ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, ADNOC, where he had worked for around about 40 years total experience. Abdullah comes from, from the field, has a lot of field hands-on experience, has a bachelor's of science and engineering, electrical engineering from the United States. He has been involved in managing many different committees, different types of projects. He's been worked in competency assurance, has worked in developing policies, developing people, and it'll be very interesting to hear what he has to say with regards to zero harm today. Then Ahmed Khalil Ibrahim is the HSE director for Babco. He's also the director for HSE for the project, the major project, an expansion project that's taking place, one of the top 5 biggest investments in the world currently, a major expansion in their refinery in Bahrain. Ahmed has an MSc in risk management from the UK, and has also got many years of experience, very much hands-on. He's an expert in emergency and fire response, and has been involved in HSE in projects and in so many different ways. He manages also and oversees, environmental matters and issues. And we've had long discussions around in the past with regards to understanding what an organization's leadership need to sort of commit to with regards to zero harm. Then we have Mr. Salman Abdullah. Mr. Salman Abdullah is the Vice President for HSE for EGA, the Emirates Global Aluminium, which is one of the largest aluminium manufacturers in the world. Actually, they operate, I believe, today the largest single-site aluminium manufacturing in the world. Salman also has a lot of hands-on experience, has been with EGA and Dubal before that for many years, took on so many different types of roles and responsibilities. And Salman is soon, inshallah, we hope to complete his doctorate, where he's doing a lot of stuff on authentic leadership and the importance of authentic leadership with regards to HSE. And in that, we therefore will be looking forward to also getting his insights into can zero harm be achieved, or should it be part of your organization's mission, or should it be part of your aspirations? Anyway, a lot to discuss today. So back to you, Larry.
Oh, well done. I mean, I know their bios, and it's you. I mean, you had to truncate so much out of that just to try to pick the highlights. But thanks very much for that. So, hopefully Ahmed can his camera will join us in a second again. But if I could just very quickly, I just wanted each of you to just tell us about the zero harm, no harm, where it fits within your policy or your mission statement, maybe when it started, but just that much very quickly. And then Abdullah, I'd like to come back to you then and get a little more in depth about the, is it working? How do you make it work, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe if I could, Abdullah, just starting with you, do you have zero harm, no harm in your mission statement policy? And if so, whenabouts did it start?
Well, Larry, thank you. Good morning, good evening, or good night, everybody. Larry, thank you for creating this platform for us to share some of our experience, best practices, the pitfalls that what we had. And also I want to thank the panel members for taking time out of their busy schedule and being with us.
Mm-hmm.
For me, first of all, we have to define zero harm or no harm to people. In any organization, zero harm should not be a slogan. It should not be a piece of paper, a policy just hanging on the wall that people they are looking at it. Zero harm looks at the totality of the organization, where the vision, the aspiration of the organization, that really it sits from the top management all the way to the guys at the sharp end. It doesn't matter what industry that you are in. Secondly, no harm, zero harm, it has to be a part and parcel of your business plan. It has to be a value for the organization. It has to find its way into the day-to-day activities that what you do to make sure that people that they go home safe, and at the same time you make a lot of profit. Your organization becomes profitable, and you don't harm people. Your precious asset, you protect them, which are people.
Abdullah, when did the zero harm, no harm, approximately when did it start with ADNOC? When about?
Yeah, with ADNOC, when I very early 80s, that was our policy when I joined the ADNOC group of companies. and HSE was on top of the agenda. Although those days we didn't have the HSE management system as such that what we talk today, but protecting no harm to people, protecting the environment, no harm to the community that we do operate in, that was always is our policy and on top of our agenda.
Wow,
Now,
1980s, because
yes.
Procter and Gamble, it was about 1976, 1977 that they brought in that. Ahmed, what about Babco? I mean, I don't Google a lot of things. I'm not a teenager, but I did Google, and it was all over your website, the no harm. So obviously that's part of it, but maybe just a bit more about it, and then when did it start?
I mean, people have, first of all, good morning, good evening, and for all, and thank you very much, Larry, for organizing this extremely beneficial event. Yes, is it aspirational? Is zero harm possible? This is a question that always people have been asking and trying to understand. Is it a conceptual? Is it something that can be done? Can it be realized? Can it be done? And people have been struggling with this because I was in a discussion with someone many years ago, and he said, look, we run a construction site as an example, and don't expect me to have zero harm on a construction site. And to the extent he wanted to say, no, if this is a huge construction site, if I have one fatality during the construction phase, I'm okay with that. I said, what do you mean you're okay with that? I couldn't comprehend the way he was saying this, and I didn't understand this. So the way I put it to him, I said, what if this person that died is your son? And then, of course, he paused. And he said to me, don't say that. I said, if you're accepting that someone else dies, but not your son at a construction site, from that moment, he started saying to me, you're right, we shouldn't be, advocating that injuries could happen at any industry, whether it was construction or oil and gas industry. In 1983, we had a major situation at Babco. We had fatalities because of a fire in 1983, May 10th, actually, in 1983. And at that time, I was a young boy when I joined. I just joined the company 2 years before that. The company general manager and chief executive at that time said, look, we will not have those kind of situations again. So what he did is he created a high-level committee that says we'll no longer accept injuries, accept incidents, accept fire in our facilities. We will do whatever it takes to make sure that we get people back home we get people back to their families home safe and sound.
That was not 1983, Ahmed?
Yes, sir. This incident happened, as I said, on 10th of May, 1983, and we had a major fire, and unfortunately, two people have died at that fire. From that time on, the concept of zero harm came into existence.
Okay. And Dr. Salman, sorry, I got to make sure. Salman, I didn't actually get to see your health and safety policy, and so I'm not sure whether you have zero harm or no harm in the policy. So just take it if you do or if you don't, and if you do, I just maybe when did it start?
Okay, thank you very much, Larry, for having me, and Assalamu alaikum to all our audience. So Larry, at EGA, Emirates Global Aluminium is more than 40-year-old industrial giant based in United Arab Emirates, and we are heavily equipment intensive. We are classified as a heavy industry. We have a power plant, we have a port, we have casting facility, and we are a huge smelting process. So it has a lot of inherent risks which can cause serious injuries. So from the very onset, the original builders of the plant, which was British Smelters, that was part of the ethos from day one. Now from day one in 1979, and that's because it's a carryover from the people who were building it for us. So if you go through the history, I think that the vision, mission, and the language has been changing over the last 4 decades. But safety, you would find in its different forms of how it is articulated. In smelter world, generally, safety is first and always. And in particularly, smelter by design always keeps on expanding. So there's many smelters who are constantly and in parallel, while they are doing operation, also have a construction of either expansion of the power plant, the port, or the casting facilities. So it always goes in hand. And we as an industry have had our share of injuries and other unfortunate events. So it is built into the industry.
Wow.
If you go to the IAI, which is International Aluminum Institute, safety is always first and built into this industry. It's very similar to, you cannot say when did it start in aviation. Safety in aviation or safety in healthcare would always be in the forefront, although articulated in different ways and form. And I just like to, Larry.
Yeah, I mean, it was big when I hate dating myself, Salman, but 30 years ago when I started doing behavior-based safety training, you know, Alcan up in Kitimat was one of the clients, and they were pretty sophisticated to be looking at behavioral processes way back then.
Yeah, I think with respect to zero harm, the subject of today, I would completely concur with Abdullah. As what was he saying? We need to have the definition clear, because for our audience, some people who are coming from, as Ahmed said, from construction side, a LTI, a couple of LTI is an acceptable format. Whereas if you're in an office, a paper cut, first aid, maybe a big event. But in aviation, as Wada was saying last week, even a near miss is a big event. So I think the context in which we talk about zero harm needs to be understood. So it may change as we move from industry to industry. So I think it will be an interesting thing for me, at least, to hear from different industry peers. What does that mean in your industry? In our industry, zero harm means absolutely no recordable incident for the whole year.
Right. Okay. But like you said, if there was a significant near miss, that certainly wouldn't, you know, that would count. You guys wouldn't ignore it at all. But
Yeah.
40 years, Salman, right from day one. That's incredibly impressive. So I can't wait to come back to you to talk about the culture that that must have that would help to create. But everybody wants, you might as well define it for us, Abdullah. I think everybody, I agree with Salman. Let's just start with a quick, carry on with what, just defining zero harm, at least as it means, what it means to you. I kind of, I think when you get to the point of the paper cut, like Salman says, I think you lose a lot of people at that stage. But I also think that you have to acknowledge a slip and fall backwards where there was something hard or sharp you could have hit your head on is significant. Near misses in vehicles at highway speed are significant. So, I'd also like to hear how you drew the line as well too. So please tell us.
Yeah, what we have done, Larry, is few years back, we have moved in ADNOC from zero harm. Basically, we went to 100% HSE. 100% HSE, what it entails is the way we behave, the way we conduct our business, being it in the office, being on the site, being on the construction. So what the aspiration was to make sure this is a lifestyle and it's 24/7. It evolves around everybody. We had a huge huge launching of 100% HSE, where our top management, they were signatory to pledge that they will do their best to make sure that every single corner of our business that we embrace HSE as a top priority, as a value. There is no shortcut, there is no compromise, and it's not going to be a slogan. So that commitment was done in front of all our shareholders, in front of our partners, the contractors, and you name it, the entire management. From there, we moved on into sets of life protection rules based on the industries incidents that that we had, and also based on our incidents where we did the trending, where we did the analysis. And Salwan said, our industry, yes, we had a share of our injuries, fatalities, and so forth. So we had to learn from those one and capture them in a what we call a life protection rule, where we had the rewards and at the same time consequence management system. So we wanted people to basically subscribe to our values. On top of that, we went to a huge campaign again. I am the difference. That I, as an individual, every individual in the organization, they can make a difference. So empowering every individual to make sure that they behave the way that the culture that we were creating. Following that, we went and done a huge cultural survey to see where do we stand in terms of the benchmark ourselves with the industries and many other areas, including the perception of our employees, both our employees and the contractors, and we come up with a safety with the HSE culture transformation. With basically we kept the focus on the areas that we were not doing well. So yes, I'm no longer.
You said to me before the just before the broadcast about the getting your people to believe in the zero harm, and as part of all of that. And I can't remember what you told me, but it was good. I don't know if you can remember it before, but that was part of how you were getting your employees, like it was the part of the 24/7, but you were getting your employees to believe in the zero harm as well too. And
Absolutely.
at first that was difficult, like you said, but
yeah, it
so
was.
How did you move that?
As we say, with the transient workforce, that what we have is a huge challenge, because people are coming from different culture, different risk perception, and what have you. So it's a huge challenge. Now, what the thing that basically has been working, empowering them that they have voices, empowering that they can stop work when it's unsafe, empowering that they can talk to people, and we had the open channel that they could communicate. So that way it took the fear away from them. And in addition to that, with some of where there are few risk takers always in the organization, and you have no choice but to apply the consequence management system as well. You have rules, and if people they don't want to comply with your rules and regulation, then they need to find something different. So are we there 100%? No. Are we working toward that? Are we creating that culture that we're going to protect our people, protect the environment, protect the community? Yes.
Excellent. Well, Salman, let me ask you basically, I don't want to say exactly the same question, but it's pretty close. You know, is it 40 years? Is it working? Like, do people like, I mean, I've heard what you said before so many times, like Larry, that, you know, this is steel, this is pulp and paper, this is logging, this is oil rigs. stuff's gonna happen. That's, you know, if you did this job. I even remember a guy who was flooring one of just a rental house that I owned, and he cut himself and he couldn't pay the rent on time. And he said, you always get cuts when you're laying linoleum. It's part of the job. And I thought, if it was part of the job, it would happen every day. It doesn't happen every day. So is it working to, like, are you getting the people to actually believe that you can achieve zero harm?
So Larry, I mean, what I've been observing, and as Dr. Wada introduced, that this is something I found extremely intriguing about zero harm, and I've gone through a number of case studies from 737 MAX, which is from aviation. You cannot say they don't have a good safety management system. You cannot say they do not have extremely well trained personnel. Yet you do have issues, not just of not having zero harm, but significant international heading of fatalities. And so my study shows that the practitioners on the shop floor. So so one case study from a manufacturer in Hong Kong, which over 15 years period have been constantly bringing the graph down and down and down. And there is this small gap, which it never hits. It hits zero and then it bounced back. So I was very intrigued. And when you listen to the academia, why that is the thing. So, I mean, maybe on the industry level, when we come to the practitioner, there's a bit of complacency that kicks in and people start making when they think about it, silly sentences like, oh, this is normal, this is the way of things. Academia doesn't do that. Academia have been studying this for many, many years, and this little bit of gap left to reach zero harm has some theories and some philosophies. And the subject which I'm particularly looking at and focusing on, it's not just the shop floor, but it's also the top floor. And this is one of the reasons when these are some of the learnings which have been built into ISO 45001, where they talk about participation of safety activities with the leadership. So we have to evolve like the financial world has evolved. You don't just go after the trader on the shop floor, but if there is a big financial issue, you go to the top guy. And the top guy, and as you mentioned, it starts from the top. Case after case after case, in the academia, people have done case studies, they find the practitioners, as they bring it close to zero, something happens. Either the market distracts the people, that somehow inadvertently some of the safety resources are taken away. And there's always an accident which can happen, but it's always when you have your focus a little bit on letting people go, or you're focused on the market conditions. And if you draw the trend of safety, the frequency rate goes up. And this is a well-documented, established. And so I was very intrigued that isn't it time when we talk about zero harm, because all the industry, by law, by regulation, by their personal commitments, have reduced, but zero harm for many people remains very elusive.
Very elusive.
And part of it is let's look elsewhere. And 45,001 is the first right step. Look at the leadership. What's the decision? Not at what's happening at the shop floor. Let's have a look at the discussion we are having at the top floor and at the board level and the management level. Because people don't realize the decision you make today, which may distract inadvertently the shop floor guy, the relationship is very difficult to establish because there's a big time lag. So that's where I come from when I look at zero harm. And at our industry, we talk about zero harm, the first thing at the board level. I'm the first one who talks at the board level. I'm the first one who speaks at the starting of every single executive meeting. And I think we have data to show that that does make an effect. We have to look elsewhere, not just the shop floor, but I couldn't emphasize enough, we have to see the discussions and the decisions we are making at the top floor.
I agree, Salman. Also though, as you can imagine in my field or trade, SafeStart, human error is inevitable. Human error is inevitable. I wouldn't know how many thousand times I've heard that. And I said, yes. And by definition, it's unpredictable, because if you knew you were going to make a mistake, you wouldn't, you knew you were going to lose that $100 bill, you wouldn't likely lose it. But the states that cause the errors, the rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency, are very predictable. You typically know when you're going to be in a rush within 5 minutes on a daily basis, and within 15 minutes when you're likely going to be tired, and who or what makes you frustrated already. So it's not that much of a shot in the dark if if you will, the gears and the building blocks or the precursors. But Ahmed, let me get to you, and then over to Dr. Wada, because Salman, I don't know if you heard Wada while you were off camera there, but Salman was talking about not just the shop floor, but the top floor as well too, in terms of in terms of zero harm and the message actually getting through. But Ahmed, let me get to you first in terms of you've got a tremendously big project going on there, as Dr. Wada said. I think something in the tune of $7 billion or something like that. And again, like Abdullah was saying, so many transient workers, a lot of challenges, like when you've got something like zero harm with that many transient workers, is it really possible to get them to believe in that we can actually do this project, for instance, without anybody getting killed? Can you actually get them to believe that?
There are two issues to me. One of them is, okay, is it sustainable? Is zero harm sustainable in any organization? And as Salman have said, changes happen in the organization, whether from senior management or there are some economical issues that might impact the whole organization in one way or another. So is zero harm sustainable? I think the way to attain zero harm is by engaging the whole workforce. And if the whole workforce is synced and they all have the same perception in the organization as the senior management and the shop floor employees and the contractors, and that you engage them in all of the activities, so they internalize health and safety, that zero harm will be possible. It is not a single-handed issue. Cannot be advocated by middle management, no senior management. You have to have the organization fully engaged, advocating the same concept, the same practices that you would be able to attain zero harm. So in either the base business or the major project, we have to do a lot of education. And one of the things we've done, we did a safety perception survey. And the reason for the safety perception survey, because we wanted to find what are the major gaps between the three levels in the organization, the employees, the middle management, and senior management. What are those gaps? And the perception survey gave us the tool to bridge those gaps, so that when we launch any of those initiatives that help us with zero harm, then everybody have the same understanding. Everybody have the same messages that they communicate to everybody in the whole organization. So unless you are able to engage your employees and the contractors, and they become actually your eyes and ears at work sites, it would be somewhat impossible to achieve zero harm. So the whole employee, the whole workforce, be it contractors and employees, have to be behaving in the same manner. So unless you are able to create the culture that empowers everybody in the organization through, for instance, Stop Work Authority, we've introduced a Stop Work Authority card signed by the chief executive that empowers anyone in the organization, anyone at what level, contractor or the company employees, to stop any unsafe conditions or unsafe acts. And they have the right to take whatever action they see necessary to have the situation corrected. So this is one of the tools. The other tool we have introduced something called the 4 keys to safety. The 4 keys to safety addresses the mind and the heart. So it's like a small risk assessment tool that an employee or a contractor employee would use before you start any work. One goes to the question, by doing this task, am I going to harm anybody, that works with me or works around me? And then you have this the heart, how much will be impacted if an incident occurs, or how much employees will be impacted if something happens at this work site. So it's a collective effort, and people have to have the same alignment when they are practicing health and safety in the organization, and only with that zero harm will be achieved. It's a journey, as Abdullah have rightly said. Are we there? We are not there, but we are in the right path to get there. In the BMB project at the moment, we are nearing 30 million injury-free work. So we started in 2017. This is we are in the third year approximately, or end of 2017, and we had so far, touch wood, no lost time or lost time injuries.
Well,
So
that's excellent, and I'm also very interested in the engagement tool you're working with the contractors. But Dr. Wada, with like what Salman was saying about it's zero harm isn't just something at the shop floor. It's also at the top floor. When you're talking with business leaders, board of directors, those folks, do you run into resistance about the concept of zero harm, or do you find that most of them now realize that? I mean, just tell me how it goes when you're there.
Well, I think when we talk about zero harm, and I recall being on a panel actually, about a year and a half ago, Abdullah, at the ADIPEC, where we were discussing the same thing, because there was a report actually developed by the IOGP and the SPE, and we were looking at the possibility of this, and the question there that was posed was, should it be a target or should it be an aspiration? And it makes a big difference. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
It being a target can be a bit challenging. So I'll be a bit more pragmatic, because I'm a bit empathetic with because the more you start working with the senior guys and boards and stuff like that, the more empathetic you understand the challenges that they have, because they're having to balance a lot of priorities, and safety is a priority to them. It's not the only priority. Huh? So
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at it as being a target, so if you set a target, and then I remember when we applied, for example, the balanced scorecard, and I had a very interesting discussion with one of the consultants about this. And I said, so, he said, no, you always have to have a cutoff, and you always have to have a target, and you have a stretch. I said to him, well, the target is that, we have 0 fatalities, for example, So what would the stretch be, I said, the cutoff could be that, your tolerance is maybe 1 injury or 1 fatality or something like that, and the target should be 0. But then what would the stretch target be? And we started thinking about, is the stretch target, maintaining a injury-free or fatality-free operation for 3 years, but then how could you then measure that year on year, and then how is it linked to bonuses and stuff like that? And I said, well, I mean, the only way that you'd have a stretch target is if you bring people back to life, from dead, not that they've died in the first place, So I said, it's not pragmatic, So we need really, to honestly have a very pragmatic approach. And I remember the example that I gave, and I said, look, you want to achieve 0. There's a lot of things that need to be put into place, and this is why Ahmed was talking about the perception survey and getting everybody, yeah, literally everybody on board, from shop floor to top floor or whatever, as Man said, but really everybody seriously engaged. Now, some of the pragmatists will tell you, look, natural accident theory will tell you that you're going to have accidents, because it's just a natural kind of failure rate. It's a natural phenomenon to have failings and to have incidents. Now, but I said to them one thing on the competency issue, and maybe Abdullah will remember this, and I gave them this example that you get onto a flight in the morning, and the captain of the flight says, well, welcome everybody this morning, we're going to be flying from, say, whatever, Abu Dhabi to London, and it's going to take us 6 hours. The flight en route seems to be fine, but please keep your seatbelts on at all times, loosely fastened, and we'll give you some updates, near descent. But by the way, my co-pilot, whatever, Abdullah, he just passed his last exam, but but we did a competency evaluation, and he's 70% competent now for the job. So we've decided to give him the job. So he's going to be flying the plane today to London. Yeah. So have a safe flight. So many people, I said to them, okay, look, tell me, honestly, put your hands up, in the audience, how many of you would actually get off that flight? And most people said, yeah. I mean, they laughed. I mean, okay, it's a funny example, right, but the reality is that and we've spoken in the last webinar about the aviation industry and being highly reliable, and this goes to the point when we talk to boards, that if you want that level of reliability, you need to be ready for that level of commitment and level of investment, because you are not going to have anybody fly the plane unless they are 100% competent. 100% competent. In, for example, the oil and gas and other industries, we put people on the job when we know that they're more or less, yeah, and more or less can be quite a big difference. Could be 10%, 20%, 30% ready, whatever, because we say, well, the systems are there, the processes are there, there's a lot of other competent people, it's okay, we can have somebody there. It's a mindset, right? So it's a mindset. So zero harm is a mindset, and I hope what I've just explained makes so when we sit with senior people, we ask them, what is your aspiration, and what is it that you believe, yeah, is really realistic, given that you have to compete in a market, and you have to make that kind of investment over time, because it's not an investment. You don't suddenly pay $100,000 and suddenly someone pops out and he's competent. It doesn't work that way. A person needs time to be developed to become competent, and these competent people in the front line on the managerial, supervisory, leadership levels, once you get them all competent, then you can achieve, or you have a better chance of achieving zero harm, right? So it's an investment. So you have to be ready for the investment. You want to put money where your mouth is, yeah, and put that commitment. You can then put zero harm as a realistic aspiration to your organization.
Yeah, well, no, excellent. I agree, and I also I think I've got this right, Ahmed. I think it's at BAPCO, but in part of what I was reading, it also said that you would be providing awareness, like in addition to the rules and the technical skills, you would also be providing awareness training. The idea that, look, people are people, they are going to make mistakes, but we can eliminate a lot of that by being proactive with this. And that was right in that, like, to your point, Dr. Wada. I mean, if you want zero harm, it's not going to be free. I mean, you're going to have to help the people get there from the top right down to the bottom. But we all do make mistakes, and it's kind of part of the way we're hardwired. But that doesn't mean, as I tell people, you can't stop somebody's mind from going off task once they're familiar with the task. But you can also help them get their mind back on task too. And it doesn't always have to be a close call. It can actually be something benign that's done proactively and positively. So let me, if I can, just sort of come back to you, Abdul, if I would, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but I mean, to safety practitioners out there, if they wanted to get their leadership to consider zero harm, and they were running into any problems or any resistance, sort of in addition to what we've talked about already, which I think were a lot of the benefits, if you were going to sort of give one of those younger safety people sort of some advice, what would you tell them in terms of how to approach their leadership about getting zero harm into the policy?
My advice would be, I think Wadah said it very nicely. You have to select the right people for the right job. You have to develop the competency of those individuals before you give them a responsibility. There are in our industry, Wadah said about the pilot, but in our industry, there are certain activities that you can't give it to the individual, that they don't have to be 100% competent. However, you grow them in that role and you increase their responsibilities and their closer supervision, on the job training and what have you, and to make sure that those individuals, they have the right attitude and they do want to work. My advice would be for the young HSE professionals would be, we cannot, first of all, we cannot focus a lot on the theory and on the numbers, etc., etc. We need to find the people that they're doing the right job, and we need to identify them and appreciate them right on the spot. We want to make sure these HSE professionals, they understand their jobs, not only the HSE job, but the nature of the business. When those individuals that they go to the fields, they go to the shop floor, they go to the manufacturing, they go to the work site, they understand the business better than the operators. That's the only way that's the only way people, they're going to trust him or her. That's the only way that those individuals, that they can advise the organization and people, they will value his advice and listen to them. So
they need to take your course, Dr. Wada, the 10-step MBA for safety practitioners. Seriously though, I think it's a great idea. But it's true, Abdullah. I mean, if you've got to communicate, you've got to be able to communicate, and you got to be able to talk about the business, and you've got to be able to talk with the worker. I think
and you have to.
It's a big, for a safety practitioner, you got to be able to talk to both levels.
Exactly.
But if say you were running, well, I'll go to Salman next. He lucked in, like right off the bat. They had zero harm when they started. But Salman, what, like if somebody, like like you were saying, they go to their boss and their boss says, hey, this is construction, you're bound to have fatalities. Get away from me with your zero harm. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but if you had a resistant manager and you wanted to try to make a case as a safety professional, what would you suggest so that you'd get it changed, but you didn't get fired?
Yeah. So Larry, there are two steps, especially in the United Arab Emirates, as we are trying to get more and more young nationals get into different professions. Let's not make their life difficult. And as Abdullah quite rightly said, I should not take a person, a young guy, and who is never worked in industry. He perhaps doesn't even know the proper terminology or the challenges the operations have, and then keep teaching him to be an EHS professional with all the theories. He is undermined even before he enters the room of the leadership. The leadership has already got a blockage. The guy doesn't even know what an OCB is. It's an oil circuit breaker. What is he going to tell me that I don't know from my 30 years of experience? So the first thing is, when you are appointing people, I am a big believer that they have to be from the area. So there's already a network. They are already an influencer in the area. And the second step is, please don't go in and start telling people what to do. If you study the servant leadership construct, rather than going and saying, you should do this, you should do that, the starting point, and to break the ice, first of all, you have to be from the area. Go to your leadership and say, hey, boss, these are the statistics. Please guide me what I should be doing for you to perform better. Engage him. If you go in and start dictating, this went wrong, and the guy you appointed did this mistake, you already broke in the communication. So my advice to the young EHS practitioners, try and understand the terminology, get to learn the business, use that terminology, and don't go in dictating people. Tell them, I'm here to support you and help you improve your safety, and get them engaged and get them into even a small project with you. Do not go and start prescribing. That is my approach, and we have tried this in the residential area, and I've made a case study on that. How does a servant leadership approach? I mean, sometimes people think these academic people are just completely nuts coming up with these things, but I have the opportunity of studying and applying some of it, and I tell you, these are some powerful tools. So that would be my approach.
Well, I'm not, and I'm thinking more of, you know, if you were if you didn't even, you know, you didn't have a health and safety policy at all, and you wanted to have zero harm in it, and you know, you convinced your leader to have a health and safety policy at least, but they were a bit resistant to the zero harm part. And I mean, in my opinion, anyhow, there's a lot of benefits to having zero harm in your policy, not just that it incorporates the environment, but it also really, it makes it easier to talk about 24/7 safety, and that you actually care about people, not just when they're at work, right? So I think it's a benefit for that. But I also know that there are a lot of people that think it's more of a target than an aspiration, and the targets should all be achievable, measurable, bonusable, like other KPIs as well. So, you know, there are two sides to the argument for sure, but I don't think it's exactly the same as a lot of other KPIs, because some of it's irreversible. Yeah, Juana, please.
So I wanted to just reflect on a recent discussion that I had with an ELT of a retail organization, where we were talking to them about actually their leadership values and the values of the organization. Not necessarily about safety. Safety was incorporated into that, and two things that were very important. One of them is what Abdullah touched on. One of them is there's the competency side of things, and if you have a gap in the competency, then you have other supportive systems like mentoring, you have supervision, you have close coordination, you have other people helping this person who hasn't mainly got, you know, the 100% competencies as yet, but you're aware of it. You're aware because you've done an assessment, you know what the gap is, and you're closing the gaps. And as you're closing the gaps, because you cannot make the person 100% actually competent without them actually working in the field. The other thing is the leadership assessment. I remember that, you know, ADNOC did a lot of assessments in the past couple of years on their people, and, you know, technical competency was one thing, but it was the leadership competency and assessment that was very, very important as well. So you understand that component. But he mentioned something called attitude, yeah, and attitude is extremely important, because, you know, you can have the ability, but if you don't have the willingness, it becomes very, very difficult to get something done properly. And you need to really believe in this. And this is going back to the ELT that I was talking to the other day with a professor that I do some research with. We told them that, look, you know, when you're in your house, yeah, in your home, right? I mean, I've got young kids. I've got kids which are 12 years old, and both of them like to do a lot of cooking. So they're using, you know, they're dealing with hot oil, they're dealing with knives, they're dealing with a lot of, you know, hazards and hazardous situations. And, you know, I had to train them, and they've been with me in the kitchen since they were 3. And I've been teaching them about the unsafe acts, right? And what not to do in terms of unsafe acts. But the unsafe conditions can arise because, you know, they're dealing with stuff which can be there. The bigger issue and the bigger risk is the fact that I've got these triplets who are 5 years old, yeah, and they also come into the kitchen. So, you know, but I don't have, you know, Larry, I mean, I don't know if any of my colleagues here have this, but I haven't written an HSE policy and stuck it on the wall of my house. and my commitment to HSE, and then all my household, including the nannies and the kids and the visitors and all that. And I don't talk about my responsibility towards a visitor coming to my house and not having an incident, right? We don't do that. Yet at the same time, it is implied, because risks are being managed at home, and everybody's responsible for their safety and the safety of everyone else. Even my younger kids, who are the triplets, who are 5 years old, I teach them that they need to be taking care of each other's safety. So they come to me and they say, "Oh, Baba, so and so, my brother is doing this and it's dangerous," and stuff like that. And I try to tell him, and then you have to intervene, right?
I get this all the time. I got 4 kids. It's my dad's a SafeStart guy. It's a long story, but anyhow,
but you're
can't run on the
you're a
stairs.
SafeStart guy, Larry.
Yeah.
But Larry, you're a SafeStart guy. But do you have an HSE policy stuck on the wall of your inside your house, which you've signed?
No, I can't even get my wife to read the 3rd part of the book. She said, "You lost me when you got into integrating this into job safety analysis." Sorry. First 2 parts were okay, but after that, sorry. Yeah, integrating human factors into incident investigation. But then, the thing is, I guess, Wada, that when you get to zero harm and getting it right down to the family and to the tools, to the hazards and everything, there is a certain amount of personal responsibility. I don't think you could possibly get your employees to yes, you have to pass the baton, but there has to be a baton to pass, and I believe the leadership has to be handing a bona fide baton, just like the instructions you were giving your kids. That has to be the real stuff you're giving them. And if it's genuine, I think the people will buy. I think they will buy into it. I don't know whether it's important, whether it's a target or an aspiration. I just don't think having a target of like yours, like your stretch target thing, when you're gonna bring the guy back to life, right? Really. And sorry, Salman, you were gonna make a point?
Yeah. So I was just smiling while Dr. Wada was talking, because there must be some karma from God that the HSC guys must get triplets, because I've got triplets, and yes, and you try and go to the operational officer there, the wife, and try to say, you should do this and you should do that. And that is exactly where you have to be the servant leader and say, how can I help you to make your life easier? And I think that, I personally went through that as a family, and Dr. Wada is clearly going through that now, that when you go in an operational area, the household, you don't go to the leadership and say, do this and don't do that. You go and ask for, I'm here to help you, how can I make it easier? And the attitude and all that, it must be different from the leadership for trying to make this a zero harm place. And this time round, you are not going to go through the training programs, you're not going to go through the HSE policy. This is your kids. You need to create an environment where there is zero harm. It is personal. So
I don't know, Salman, in your house, she's the operations manager. In my house, she's the chief finance officer and internal audit head.
I went for Empress. I thought was best. And I remember once when Erin was 4 years old, running down the hall on her sock feet, and Donna said, "Erin, stop rushing." And I just looked at her, and she goes, "You don't think I believe in SafeStart?" "Well, I do. I just don't let you know it." And I thought, oh my goodness, isn't that interesting? Because I think you're really right, Salman. How all of this is approached is really important too, right? Because it's easy for people to say, zero harm, it's impossible, you'll never get it, and so I won't try, which I think is probably the very worst perspective, because try your best and some stuff will still slip through.
Larry, I want
a much more proactive attitude. Sorry, go
Larry,
ahead.
I wanted to ask Ahmed, because he must be facing a massive challenge with regards to the whole concept of, even if in Babco as an organization they were able to to convince the management and all the employees of zero harm. But how do you do that, man, with what, 20,000 contractors, Ahmed?
He was sort of answering that a bit when you were off camera, but I still want to hear a bit more about this because it's impressive.
The key to me, I think,
and then we'll probably have to say goodbye to everybody and come back again for the one on leadership, which I'm really interested in hearing from the four of you on the whole felt leadership, and does it make it down to the worker level? And again, in your case, Ahmed, can you take it to the transient contractors, especially on mass like that? So yeah, tell us.
The key to me is middle management. Unless you are able to bring middle management on board, this mission would be virtually impossible. Even if you had the top leadership engaged, even if you had the employees engaged, the middle management to me are the most important key to this whole thing, because they are the individuals who would make sure that systems and processes are being adhered to 100%. They also would communicate senior management messages and advice to the shop floor employees. So unless middle management are completely engaged and understand the whole process, it would be impossible. So we have focused on the supervisors, the superintendents, the safety officers, the foremen, and we made sure that those individuals are fully, fully they have the tools required to be able to interact with employees and communicate the same messages, because they are our ears and eyes at site. So only with being able to fully engage middle management that we were able, especially at the major project, that we were able to achieve what we have achieved so far, with nearing 30 million employee hours without a lost time injury, without a lost time or no injury. So regardless of how much work you do with the workforce, you have to have the middle management fully engaged in this process. Otherwise, it would become, as I said, mission impossible.
Well, he also, Wada, he also talked briefly about an engagement tool that they were using as well, getting them to think of. I can't remember it all, Ahmed, but basically, getting them to think and also getting them to feel a bit like heart mind kind of thing. I remember you said that.
We have tools. One of those tools is called I Am Safety Card. The I Am Safety Card enables everybody in the whole organization to submit observations or whatever they see to their middle management, which normally get investigated immediately. These are black safety observations that they would probably use to highlight health and safety issues to their middle management. And those safety cards are taken seriously. They are logged. We do a lot of analysis, but we need to see action taken within 24 hours to correct those situations. And if not, normally I will monitor those IAM safety card and will make sure that whatever observations were made during the normal working hours by employees are handled in a timely manner. To give it some credibility, otherwise, employees will say, look, we've highlighted the safety issue and no one have taken any action against it. So we dealing with those safety issues promptly and making sure that something is done about them gives health and safety credibility, and also shows that management do care about their employees and they are willing to do whatever it takes to create a safe working environment.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Larry, I know that we've run out of time, but I just, because I think it's very, very important for the audience to hear this, because I know, Abdullah, if you recall, many years ago on your onshore facilities, there was a very, very tragic incident involving H2S and workers going into a pit, into a valve pit, and maybe can you describe to us, after that incident, the leadership within the organization, not only within that subsidiary, but within the greater group, what was the change? I mean, did zero harm become become more of a target, or did it become less of a realistic target, do you think, in people's minds? And how were you able to get people to really understand after that? You know, I think there were 3 or 4 fatalities. How are you able to really change that back over?
Organization, unfortunately, sometimes organization, they learn from the incidents, or sometimes organization wakes up as a result of certain incidents. But that was really very tragic incident, and it was a very sad days for all of us. Definitely, in our industry, the way we approached the exploration, and in the past we used to have a sweet gas, sweet oil, etc., etc. Now we were moving to the more of a sour gas, more H2S, etc., etc., which is required a totally different mindset. And that unfortunate incident, it really pushed the organization and everybody, and that's why purposely we made that video. So we don't forget about it. As I say, organization, they have a very short memory. Unless you have something to remind you, to remind your workforce, remind the management, that's the only way that you can make improvement. But I think as learning, what I wanted, this unfortunate COVID-19, I think for everybody, not only in our industry, is a life learning. Today, what Ahmed Khalil was saying, you have to look at the middle management, you have to look at the supervisors. If you look at the way we behave with the COVID-19 in term of how we look after the hygiene, how we wear our PPE, how we keep social distancing, how we look at, and every individual, because I know you're going to impact me and I know I'm going to impact you. So therefore, we have a common interest. That's why the spread of the COVID-19, it has certain part of the world or certain workplaces, it has been controlled because the whole organization, they are engaged and they have a common denominator, protecting each other. So if we can look at the safety, if we learn from this one, as you say, from the labor, from the supervisor, from the technician, from the field or facility manager, from the directors and CEOs, everybody basically they practicing that one. So what we want as a safety professionals or as an industry, this unfortunate COVID situation that what we had, we need to learn from this one and the similar style, apply it at the work site.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's also a great for zero harm. I mean, it's also you have to be very fastidious. You have to be very careful with all of the, you know, all of the error, everything that you're doing. And one of the panelists that was with us in North America, Dr. Panapinto from Procter & Gamble, you know, Wada was on the panel with us. He says, you know, even when we all make little mistakes too, Larry. It's just that, you know, when it's a cut, you know right away the cause and effect. When it's COVID, you don't know right away always. So it's more difficult. I think in a more rigorous system really gives you a lot of protection against it, and I think might even help people with the zero harm. But guys, I should really, I'll talk to you all night, and I can't. I've got to let everybody go. We're past the hour, but 3 weeks from today, we are going to be talking about felt leadership, and can you actually get the message from the top right down to the shop floor? And if you can, how do you do it? What are the most successful ways to do it? And everybody on the panel here has had a great deal of experience with this and some success with it as well too. So hopefully you can all join us 3 weeks, same time, We'll be talking about felt leadership and can you actually make it all the way down to the shop floor? And of course, Ahmed, we're going to be asking you, can you make it right out to all of those contractors as well? So again, gentlemen, thank you very much again for everything. It's a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking with you. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again in 3 weeks. And thanks very much, everybody, for watching. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.